Hi guys, I recently went to New Orleans, Louisiana, and I wanted to share with you the major sights I saw while I was there. The first one you see here is Congo Square. It's a major site there in Louisiana. One of the main things I learned while I was there was that when the Atlantic slave trade was occurring, they had a law called the Code Noir. This basically stated that no one was allowed to work on Sundays, whether you were a slave or not. As a result, slaves often gathered here on Sundays and created a circle of drum lines that were the same drum lines you would hear in Africa. These African beats actually inspired the creation of jazz music you hear today. Over time, it went from heavy African influences to other subgenres like ragtime and swing, and then eventually modern jazz. The next thing you see here is Buddy Bolden. He is not nearly as well known as Louis Armstrong, mainly due to the fact that recording music wasn't as common in the late 1800s as it was in the early 1920s and from then on. He's actually one of the greatest influences in jazz music and played the cornet. He was mainly known for improvising in ragtime music as well as in blues music. He was also the first to have the idea to have brass instruments playing blues music, and he got his musical ideas from gospel music. One of his most famous songs is humorously called, quote, Funky Butt, but later this song was called the Buddy Bolden's Blues. The original name was named after the effect of when sweaty people in an auditorium dance close together. Later on, at the age of 30, due to being diagnosed with schizophrenia, he spent the rest of his life at the Louisiana State Insane Asylum. So this white building you see here is actually the only original French building that still stands in Louisiana. And the main reason for that, I believe, is the tour guide said there were 2 different fires that happened in the city that burned down all the other original buildings. So this is why this is the only one that still stands. But another thing about this building is that it used to be a building where nuns lived in the past. And what happened is that when Louisiana was founded, I don't remember the guys' names, but the tour guide basically said that there were 2 French guys from Canada who discovered Louisiana. And they wrote a letter to the king at the time in France to start bringing women from France to Louisiana so that the population can eventually start increasing. So what France did in response to that letter is they actually took the women who were in prison at the time and they shipped them over on a ship. Their plan epically failed because when the women got there, a lot of them arrived at this white building and were like, instead of marrying like one of these guys here and then being forced to like have a child, I think I'm just gonna become a nun, and that way I have guaranteed housing, I have guaranteed food, guaranteed shelter, and I think I'm gonna go that way instead. So then the second time, the same two French guys who founded Louisiana, they write out another letter to the king, and the second time it doesn't work, but I forget the reason. But by the third time, they were like, can you please send us women who are not convicts and actually, quote, like, our marriage material. The plan kind of worked, kind of not. But I remember she said that a lot of the women who were coming over on ships, it took you like 6 months to get here from, if you traveled by ship, obviously. So about like half of them ended up dying on the ship from scurvy or some type of infectious disease. So they, from the get-go, got half the population they were intending to get from France. But another fun fact she said was that, of course, back then it was taboo to have children out of wedlock. And so if a child was born out of wedlock, but also because the child mortality rate was so high at that time as well, she said like 50% of the kids died at that time, and didn't make it before the age of 5. So one of the things she said is that now the nuns, they were supposed to not bury the baby or the child behind this building if they were born out of wedlock, because they didn't consider it a legitimate child. Now the nuns, they still thought that the child should be buried with respect. So while they weren't buried in the backyard of this building, instead they were actually buried in one of the back rooms of the building, I believe she said. And she said later on they ended up finding, when they were doing renovations of this building, a bunch of skeletons that were from children, because the nuns ended up burying the kids underneath this one room in the building so that the other people wouldn't find out that they were buried on the same land as the other children. And because of this, she said you still may hear like a ghost of children running around the street of where this building is at. So very interesting stuff here. On our way to the cafe, we passed by this Walgreens pharmacy, and listen closely here. I ended up taking a video of this because I thought it was very odd that they were playing a creepy organ outside of the store, but they weren't promoting anything Halloween outside at the time. It was very random. Just listen. If you like this video, like and subscribe. You know it can't hurt. Also, don't forget to click that little bell. And if you like podcasts, check out my podcast called This Is Adulting. Okay, bye!